Yes, folks, there seems to be a consensus on this channel that Jacinda Ardern is deliberately crashing New Zealand's economy for power and control, and I fully agree. And as said yesterday on The Outsiders, we are now getting our free 30-day trial of communism, because effectively we are now under state control. Our movements have been restricted, some property rights have been removed, and the state is now telling us what newspapers we can read. Now, Carol Saki has done a very good video about the newspaper story, so I've posted a link to that in the description below. Now, without question, Labor and the Greens are loving this pandemic because they love nothing better than to see planes not flying and the depopulation of burdensome old people. Yes, the more conservative people. But the sad reality is this: the more we fight them, by breaking their rules and spreading the virus around, the more we play into their hands. We give them an excuse to extend this free trial of communism. Anyway, folks, have a listen to the totalitarian mindset of James Shaw.
It is undeniable that with the world being forced to slow down, the environment has had a bit of a break and flourished maybe. We've heard about dolphins returning to the canals of Verona, the air clearing of smog in China. Is that true? And is there an environmental benefit to the outbreak of this virus? It's a silver lining I think people are looking for. Joining us now, Green Party co-leader James Shaw, who is the Oracle, and he will know. James, g'day, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
How's a government minister like yourself coping in this isolation?
Well, I'm in a much more fortunate position than most people. I have a home office, and so, my technology setup means that basically I've gone from back-to-back meetings in personal day to back-to-back meetings over the internet all day. Otherwise, life continues. But a lot of people, don't have the kind of setup. So my heart goes out to them.
It must be pretty daunting for the government that you're a part of, as co-leader of the Greens. You're with in a government formation with Labour and New Zealand First. It must be pretty daunting thinking, how do we come out of this as a country?
Yes. Having said that, there have been economic crises and health crises in the past that we can learn from. I think occasionally when we have these things, excuse me, as we've rebuilt, we've made mistakes, and it's completely understandable that people just want to go back to the way things were before the crisis. But this time, I hope that we've got an opportunity to build back in a different way, and so lock in a kind of a better future than the pathway that we were on.
Do you see what he's trying to do there, folks? He's trying to link this virus with climate change.
Okay. When you say, I'll get to the environment shortly, but when you say you want to see a different pathway, how fundamentally different would you like to see? I mean, what are you talking about? Can you name something that you'd like to see happen?
Well, obviously as Minister for Climate Change, the pathway that we have been on is unsustainable. And if we're going to spend tens of billions of dollars on pumping up the economy and keeping businesses intact and keeping people in work, there is a way that we can shape that. So
yes, we'll shape it the way we want, not the way New Zealand wants.
With that, in the future, the economy locks us into a cleaner, greener future.
Again, what does cleaner, greener have to do with this virus? Absolutely nothing.
Than the pathway that we were on. It's a matter of making some choices about, where to put that investment.
So what you mean there is ugly, unproductive wind farms everywhere.
Our farmers are crucial now, aren't they? And now more than ever, we need our farmers. They feed us, they feed the world. And now's not the time to be putting restraints or constraints on them, I would have thought.
Well, look, our farmers have always been crucial. because people have always needed to eat and they need to eat now. And I know a lot of people sort of say, well, you know, as a sector of the economy, they're doing fine. Actually, it is that they actually do provide an essential service, not only in rough times like now, but actually in good times as well.
You lying bastard. You don't give a damn about farmers.
What about consumers? What can they do? Because we've seen a report from The Guardian talking about the science article, you would have seen this, the journal, suggesting what the best thing they could do to curb climate change would be to stop eating meat and dairy. Do you agree?
Well, look, 95% of New Zealanders consume meat, and, you know, I mean, it is kind of fairly obvious that there's a lot of water, a lot of energy, and a lot of land use that goes into you know, protein production that way. If somebody wanted to have an immediate impact, they could, you know, eat one less meat meal per week.
Yes, he's so pro-farming he wants people to stop eating meat.
But I actually think it's, you know, consumer demand and consumer behaviour is important, but it's actually about the aggregate.
Would you encourage that as a government, or was that just your personal view that people should just eat less meat?
View. No, no, we're not encouraging that as a government. What we're trying to do is to ensure that there's settings right across the economy that make sure that people are supported, that they're really clear about the direction of travel, that there are sufficient incentives to support that transition, right? And then essentially what consumers do is really up to them.
But that's a huge threat to our economy, given how much we do in meat and dairy, how important it is. We heard from Damien O'Connor. If this message is starting to go around the world, stop eating meat and dairy, I mean, are you worried about that?
No, I'm not. I'm not. We know that, you know, it's a very big planet. New Zealand has enough land to feed about 40 million people with current production methodologies.
With current production methodologies. So why do you want to change that? Why do you want to change farmers into organic market gardeners, selling their produce at farmers' markets, etc.? Anyway, folks, this is his idea of a good alternative to meat protein.
It's continuing this line of thought. So I have some friends that are farmers in Southland, for example. They're of a generation that for them it would be quite a big change to move to such policies. So how does the conversation look? Because often you'd hear from them, oh, the government added more land to the national park. It's now going to be harder to do stuff in that area. So how does the transition for those that are already not going to have it easy to change all their habits as farmers? How do you imagine this conversation?
There's been, I think, a huge shift in the conversation from farmers. It's not a monolithic voice. I'm not sure it ever was, but certainly in recent years it's been quite different. And it is interesting that there's, I think, quite a generational split. So a lot of the younger farmers, people in their 30s and their 40s, you know, embracing whether it's regenerative agriculture or high precision agriculture, you know, looking at alternative proteins. A friend of mine over in the Wairarapa has just started a cricket farm.
Wow, cricket farming. That's the way to go. Let's export tons and tons of crickets around the world. And I wonder what cricket milk tastes like. Anyway, back to the first video.
Okay, the environment itself. It has had a reprieve. I'm thinking, the waterways must be, you know, there's no industry going on. A third of the world, this is the number I saw last night, a third of the world's population is in lockdown. It means industry is not going ahead. We're no longer polluting the skies. There's no aeroplanes out there, or not really many at all. Is it true, or is it false that the environment's having a break?
Well, no, for no doubt there is a sort of a temporary reprieve, but Duncan, this is not the way to go about reducing pollution by having an economic meltdown and everybody staying at home. I mean, at best, we've got a couple of months here.
What does he mean by that? We were told 4 weeks.
And actually, what we need to do is make sure that when we do return to work and we do get our industries back up and running, that we actually do so in a way that ensures long-term sustainability.
You mean long-term bankruptcy, don't you?
Not just this kind of short, sharp shock. And the other problem, of course, is because we are having a massive economic retraction, which means, ultimately there's less activity, there's fewer tax dollars coming in. And so what that means is it's going to be more difficult on the rebuild side for us to keep our eye on the big long-term challenges facing the country. That is always the downside of these kind of economic shocks.
I wasn't suggesting for sort of one moment that we should have one of these shocks every couple of years to give the environment a bit of a break. Certainly didn't want that to come across in that way. I don't think people took that either. But do you think that you will make some concessions in the year ahead around policy because of what's happened, or you do just stick with your path?
Well, I think there's two things. First of all, the government's work program has already been delayed, right? So just as a function of needing to move into a national state of emergency and shutter parts of the economy and keep everyone at home. And so, our regular work program is, and we're still trying to work out exactly how long, but it's probably at least a couple of months delayed. Having said that, like I said before, as we think about how we rebuild our economy and where we put our money, we do have an opportunity to think about what kind of world we want to create.
When he says we, he's not talking about you. He's talking about himself and a handful of radical totalitarian greenies.
Because we are about to invest tens of billions of dollars into ensuring that people have got jobs, making sure that we've got good industries up and running, and so on. And so, how we do that, I think, is a matter that we do have some choices about.
That's like picking winners, though, isn't it? So anyone in sort of fossil fuel industry or whatever at the back end of this government, your government, may not back them.
Exactly.
Off the back, you have to be a government favourite to survive.
What we need to do is to look for industries that create maximum employment.
Yes, communist-style gardens, market gardens, and rice paddies. Yeah, so what can we conclude from that interview, folks? Well, it's quite clear to me James Shaw is pulling the strings in that coalition, besides the UN, of course. He has no intention of rebuilding our economy back to what it was, but rather he's hell-bent on taking us into his fantasy world of cricket farms, wind farms, and no fossil fuels, and of course the real world of bankruptcy.